Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to Muskegon Rotary. My name is Tim Arter and I have the pleasure of serving as your president this year. Today's program will be about safer teens. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a reflection by Rabbi Alan Alpert. We will recite the four-way test at the end of the meeting. At this time, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rabbi?
I think many of us were under the impression, and Tim was the only one that got it right, that the Serenity Prayer was written by Francis of Assisi, and it was not. And taking a look at it, a version of the prayer was originally composed by Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr in the early 30s. There's not a specific date. It is still a popular prayer or invocation today. The original seems to be this, because there's a number of different versions. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. A version of this is also used by AA. There is a direct connection for many of this. Reinhold Niebuhr was a teacher of what? Rotary, Muskegon Rotary president. What? Nobody remembers that far? He had a deep voice. Don Matthews. Don went to Union Theological Seminary in New York, and he had Reinhold Niebuhr as his professor. So I gave you the original. Sometimes people are a little bit concerned in invoking divinity by whatever name. So if you want to do the original, God grant me, or you can simply say, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Very well done, Rabbi. At this time, you can return to your seats and finish your meal. I will be getting back to you in a little bit. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Sounds like we got some great discussions going on out there. At this time, I'd like to call forward the Rotarians and guests and any visiting Rotarians we may have. Thank you.
There, how you doing? Good, nice to spend These are my guests, yeah. I know. Come on over. You want me to be loud and stay in the room? Good afternoon, everyone. Hi.
Okay, let's come to order here.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, I'm Monica Turnbull. I'm the CEO of Boys and Girls Club of the Muskegon Lake Shore. Today I have with me Laura Nichols. She is our teen director of our teen zone at the clubhouse. And I have Sabrina Santiago here. She is our clubhouse director. So you'll be able to see them next week after the tour as well. But they're very interested in the Safer Teens program. Thank you.
My name is Tim Tuthill. It's nice to introduce Michelle Lipka to you. Michelle and I have been connected through work for close to 10 years now, and we worked together at Clark Retirement Community, and then we worked together at First United Methodist Church in Grand Rapids together, and then I was driving over to Muskegon to Rotary one day, and I saw a billboard with Michelle on it, and so Michelle is a realtor with Five Star Realty, and I'm like, I'm going to call Michelle, and so we're connecting here at Rotary today, so.
My name's Dave Muttendorp, and I have a friend with me today, Bob Malenfant. I first met him on a sailboat a few years ago, sailing across Lake Michigan, and then I run into him at Wheatland on a regular basis, and I learned that he's good at everything. And so after we went to Rotary Park a few weeks ago, I noticed the drums were broke, some of the other instruments were broke, and Bob also loves music, and I said, hey, Bob, would you take a look at these? Maybe we could fix them. And I was thinking we'd fix one or two of them, and Bob's actually fixed all the musical instruments at all 8 of the parks in town. And we'll have pictures next week of the products reinstalled and as he's rebuilt all the drums and everything else. So if you get a chance, say thanks to Bob.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Seitzema and have a really interesting story how I met this person. She's my daughter, Anna Seitzema. She graduated from Calvin University a couple years ago and is working for Touchpoint Marketing, which is based in Grand Haven, but they have clients all over. She lives in Grand Rapids, but has joined the JCs here in Muskegon, so we're trying to keep her connected and suck her in. So, Anna.
Susan Crane, again to introduce Craig Pearson, whose application has been submitted, and hopefully he will become a member really soon. He has Coffee with Craig, a Facebook show, and Blue House Manor and finance stuff, and interested in community. So he's going to make a great Rotarian.
Between the pink, so you can kind of see that. Good afternoon, Rotary. First off, public service announcement, they moved the cookies. They're on a table over there, so be sure to get them. Hey, I care. So, but what's even better than a cookie, as if there is something, is these students we have today, because Mona Shores is in the house! To introduce two of the seniors is Stacy Myers. She's one of the counselors at the high school.
Hi there. I'm Stacy Myers. Nice to be here. I have two of our finest students. Well, I guess a little about Mona Shores. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to the state this year, but our volleyball team did, so they won. But on a positive note, I've got two of our finest here. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about themselves and what their plan is. But we have Ava Fry in Mason Southland.
Hi, I'm Ava Fry. At school, I'm a member of National Honor Society and the Link Crew, and I also do soccer all year round. Then I also volunteer for youth sports camps in the summer. And I'm planning on going to Michigan State University because of their osteopathic medicine program.
Hi, I'm Mason Southland, and I don't know what I'm doing next year, but still trying to figure it out. Interested in finance and healthcare, and I play golf.
And what just happened with golf?
I was just announced that I'm an all-state golfer.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask Emma Peterson to come forward and introduce today's speaker.
Thanks, Tim. It is my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Brian Stork. Dr. Stork is a urologist here in Muskegon and an assistant clinical professor in the Department of Urology at U of M. Brian believes that a physician's role extends beyond the clinic or the operating room and out into the community. And really, in response to some of the really the devastating impact that violence in our community has had, Dr. Stork has focused on youth violence and gun prevention as the focus of his research, community service, and advocacy. So this is what you'll hear about today, and it includes our Safer Teens program, which is an evidence-based youth violence prevention program in our Trinity Health Emergency Room and other sites within West Michigan. In addition to this, Dr. Stork serves on the MDHHS Community Violence Intervention Advisory Council and on the Michigan State Medical Society Board of Directors. He also loves hanging out with his family and beekeeping. Welcome, Dr. Stork.
Well, thank you, Emma, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. And before I get into it, I want to call out a few Rotarians really for their assistance in getting this program going. And that it would include Christy Neigengast, DJ Hilson, Emma Peterson, of course, and Anna Seitzma. And then as I was listening to the conversations before coming up here today, I realized that because of your community service work that I should be thanking all of you, because we're going to talk about some upstream things that prevent violence, and whether you know it or not, you're all involved in that. So can I have my first slide, Mike? So as Emma said, my name is Brian Stork. I moved here 23 years ago with my wife, Marisol, my son, Jack, daughter, Marin, and we have a dog named Penny. And I've loved being part of the community. When I started out, I was in practice with Dr. Joe Salas and Kevin Stone, who many of you know. And, life comes at you fast, because when you start to get gray hair, you go from being the junior partner to the senior partner in like no time. And that's what happened to me. And it's not only professionally that your life changes. You go from being self-centered to focused on your spouse and your kids to one day you wake up and you're worried about everybody's kids. And that's the space that I'm in right now. So what I'd like to talk to you today is about the Safer Teens program, about the academic community partnership we have with the University of Michigan, why I personally think it's so great, and I hope you will too. And just talk to you about how I'm not an expert in this topic. This just kind of evolved, and the right people have been showing up at the right time, and I'm really proud of the program. So 2017 was kind of an interesting year for me. There was a lot of change going on in healthcare. The merger between Hackley and Mercy was in process. And because of the changes in healthcare, we moved from a private practice model to actually being part of the Department of Urology at the University of Michigan. And so I'm still the same guy, I just have a different badge. But joining the University of Michigan had a lot of benefits, specifically with respect to research resources and expertise and that kind of thing. Also in 2017, there was an uptick in violence in the community, and as a urologist, I only see maybe 7% of gun violence injuries, really a very small proportion. But my partners and I were called to see more of these injuries. So for example, this injury on the right, you can see really how horrific that is. That was taken care of by one of my partners. And you don't need to be a physician to think about the life-altering effects of a gun violence injury like that. And I'll tell you, as a provider, it's really traumatic, not only for us, but for the staff, and of course, for the patient, the family, and the community. The injury on the left, I actually did take care of. This was a young man who suffered an injury to his liver and his ureter from a gunshot wound. And I was called into the operating room, and a general surgeon had already fixed the liver, and I fixed the ureter. And later, I went up to the ICU to round on the patient, and it turns out that this had been his third admission for a gun violence-related injury. And, like I said, you get to be my age, and you start thinking about everybody's kids, and it was really heart-wrenching to think that this was happening in our community, and to talk to the families and just see how dejected they were about the future of their children. So I started thinking about ways that maybe we could, as healthcare providers, do more than what we call treat and treat, right? Like maybe there was a role for healthcare to lead in prevention. And especially with the resources of the University of Michigan, it seemed like that might be an opportunity. So fortunately, I wasn't alone in this. There was an ER resident at Hackley at the time named Dr. Christopher Matson, and he's an ER attendee now, so you may at some point see him over on the Mercy campus. And Chris was interested in this in his first year as a resident. So what we did is we just went through the charts of a 4-year period of all the gun violence victims that had been seen in healthcare facilities. So not the ones, that maybe were part of the criminal justice system, just the ones that had been seen in healthcare. And so Chris reviewed 307 injuries, and these injuries at the time were being treated all over the place, but about 82% of them were at Hackley, because Hackley was our level 1 trauma center at the time. And this is a little bit of what Chris found. I should start off by saying that we see very few suicide patients in the hospital due to gun violence injuries because the gun is such an effective way of committing suicide. So I can tell you when we went through these 307 cases, there were only a handful of suicide victims that made it to the hospital, and there was only a 50% survival rate of those patients who did make it. So I'm not necessarily talking about suicide at all today, but I just kind of want to put that on the back burner because there's some big opportunities there in the future. But what Chris found was that of those 307 patients, 213 of them were the victims of gun violence, meaning it wasn't an accidental discharge or a suicide. The mean age of the victims was 25 years old. About roughly 90% of them were male, and 90% of them roughly were African American. And I just want to stop here for a second and say, there's a big push in healthcare right now to deal with health disparities. You hear about this all the time. And in my specialty of urology, for example, an African American man has a 1.7 times greater risk of having prostate cancer than a white man, and a 2 times risk of dying from it. When you think about health disparities, I'd never seen anything like this when Chris showed this to me. Nationally, there's about a 15 times higher rate of being shot if you're a black man than if you're a white man. It's just really stunning to think about. The other thing that was kind of interesting is that, you think about when someone gets shot, that they're going to be in the hospital for a long time, and it turns out that a lot of these injuries, people go home the same day. I didn't realize that. I thought, wow, that's something. And I think our healthcare system at the time and continues to do a really good job. The surgeons do a very good job of managing this. There's a 7% chance mortality if you arrive at a hospital with a gun wound. And then Christy Nagengast was kind enough to help us with this study. We thought that, we need some economic data on this to really drive prevention efforts forward, right? It's not just that it's the right thing to do, it's that there's an economic case for it as well. So all told, with these 307 patients, the hospital charged about $10,000 on average for the care of these patients. But over time, that adds up, and that's just an average. And over the 4-year period that we studied, the payers reimbursed over $6 million to our healthcare system for the care of gun violence patients, injured patients. And Medicaid, as you might expect, was the biggest payer. And of course, we all contribute to Medicaid, through our tax dollars. So it seemed as though there was an argument to make with the payers, at least, that, hey, maybe we should try to do something to keep people from being shot in the first place. I should go on to add that we also found that the hospital lost money overall. When we looked at 307 patients, the hospital lost money on the care of gun violence injuries. So there was a case to make to the hospital as well. And of course, you know, when we get down to it, it's really not so much about the numbers, it's about the people. It's about the victims. And there is a website that I follow that I'm not sure about the scientific accuracy of it, but it seems to be pretty accurate just when I follow the news. And these are the victims of gun violence that they project since our study was published in 2001. So as you can see, this is an ongoing problem. You can see the community that it tends to affect the most, and you can probably imagine the devastating effects that it has on that community. And my mentor, Dr. David Miller, who happens to be the president of Michigan Medicine, has a saying, you know, we all rise and fall together, right? So it's not just this community, it's our community, and we're really only as good as what's going on at the bottom of the ship, you know? So we really need to focus our efforts on the whole vessel rather than just the deck chairs, if you will. And it's not just the physical injuries that occur, it's the psychological injuries that occur. It's the way it affects the person who witnesses violence and their families, so there's behavioral changes that occur. But I was at a talk recently about lifestyle medicine, and I stole this slide from Dr. Arntz because I'd never really understood the way trauma biologically is passed on to future generations. And so if you sort of ignore the words on this slide and just look at the diagram, basically what happens is, let's say that a pregnant woman is abused or witnesses violence. That raises her stress hormones or her cortisol and other hormones. And as a result, some of the genes get methylated, or essentially there's little bookmarks put on your genes for which proteins you want to express. And those stress hormones cross the placenta, so it's not only the mother that suffers the impact of witnessing violence, but it's her child that suffers the impact. And the child, in the first trimester, starts to, if it's a baby girl, will start to form ovaries and eggs, and those stress hormones affect those future gametes as well. So it affects 3 generations of people when you have a traumatic event. And I don't know if the reverse is true, but it's really fun to think about, you know, that if you were to intervene, if you were to offer hope, I think it would probably offer 3 generations worth of prevention and positivity as well, although I don't know that for sure. So really, after this study was done, we spoke with DJ Hilson, and we said, you know, we think that healthcare has something to offer to our community with respect to gun violence prevention. He agreed. We met with the Social Justice Commission, who agreed, and we got acquainted with Dr. Patrick Carter and Mark Zimmerman at the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention at the University of Michigan. And they had done some work in Flint years ago on an intervention program called Safer Teens. And the idea behind Safer Teens is that in their ER, I should add that the ER in Safer Teens stands for emergency room, or it's an abbreviation for emergency room. So this was an intervention that was developed in the emergency room. In Flint, they found that when a gun violence victim came in, if they reviewed the chart, that they'd been seen by a healthcare provider 50% of the time in the previous year. So it seemed like healthcare was a opportunity to offer a prevention program in 50% of cases. And University of Michigan uses a public health model, so you know they want to go upstream. They want to keep patients out of the ER by offering interventions further upline, like way upline, like maybe maternal health care and parenting skills and conflict resolution skills and housing and all that stuff. You know, all these things that you help work on are upstream potential interventions for violence reduction. And so now the star of the show is the Safer Teens program, and Mike, we have a 3-minute video.
Intervening in a hospital setting is a unique opportunity to reach young people with support when they need it most. Brief interventions can help young people develop problem-solving skills and connect them to essential services to mitigate harm and protect them in the future.
As a physician, my early days of standing in the trauma bay, seeing kids who we sent out and then we failed and come back and see them in the trauma bay, sometimes bleeding to death and knowing that we hadn't done enough, and that's very motivating. Injuries are the leading cause of death for 60% of teens and adolescents and children throughout that early age of their life, and we're working to decrease those numbers.
The Safer Teen Study is an evidence-based, one-on-one, 30-minute brief intervention that we do with youth that come into the emergency department for anything. We approach people, get informed consent, then do a 30-minute brief one-on-one session with them, talk about their goals, what they want out of life, their experiences with fighting, and then go through different role plays with them to talk about different skills that they could use to either avoid fighting in the future and think about those things.
The notion behind this is this public health model where instead of waiting for someone to enter a treatment center or a criminal justice setting, why can't we take interventions and bring them out to kids in a prevention-focused way, or from young people who are experiencing some risk behaviors, and do interventions to really change their trajectory in life?
With this intervention, it's a lot of times the first time that anyone's asked our youth what they want out of life and what their goals are, how they can achieve those goals. So once we start talking to our youth, sometimes it's like a faucet turning on and they get really excited and they really want to process that with someone who really cares and understands them and has confidence in them that they can achieve their goals.
When we initially started, people said kids aren't going to want to talk to you about violence. Well, they're there for their belly pain or their foot. And we found that to be completely not true. Nobody else is talking to these kids about the violence that they're experiencing in their life. They want to talk about it. When given the opening in a safe space by trusted professionals who are non-judgmental and are not blaming them, they open up and they're very much want to talk to us and sometimes don't want to stop talking to us and would like to come back and talk to us again about this. They then see the emergency department as a place that cares about them.
Okay, so I'm running on time here, so I'm gonna speed it up. So essentially in our discussions with the Youth Violence Prevention Center, we were able to make our community a implementation site for Safer Teens and for a youth advisory board project. And the university got a $6 million 5-year grant from the CDC to do this. And we're currently implementing Safer Teens into the Trinity Health Emergency Room, Health West, Muskegon Pediatrics, and then next year we'll go into what was formerly called Fruitport Family Medicine, and has a more academic name now. And this is just a slide of, the successes and seeming failures that we have. It's an implementation study, but sometimes I think it's a barriers to implementation study. I'm a surgeon, so when I'm in the operating room, I just ask for something and it shows up. The real world, is, I think you all know, is quite a bit different. But this is an example of the probably the most complex environment we work in, the emergency room. It's an example of how our screening rates have improved over time with the use of process improvement and with the leadership of Iris Towers, who has just done a fantastic job of helping us get our screening rates up. This is our implementation rates, which have lagged behind our screening rates. We've had to figure out a whole host of post-COVID challenges to deliver this intervention in a very busy emergency room that's short-staffed with people that work 12 hours a day, have competing influences and priorities in a healthcare system that's part of a much larger healthcare system where decision-making is no longer centralized completely in our community. But we are making progress, and one of the ways that we're making progress is with the use of a community health worker. So we learned that our nurses did not have the capacity to screen, so we used our registration clerks to screen, and we learned that our social workers and our clergy didn't have the capacity to do the interventions. So we've, through private and hospital funding, hired our first community health worker for the emergency room. Her name is Melissa Reyes. And so she works second shift now. So if a youth for any reason comes into the emergency room and they scream positive for violence, they will be offered this intervention by Melissa. And as Dr. Cunningham said, who is now, as it turns out, president of the University of Minnesota, kids want to do this. I mean, 70% of kids we offer this to decide to do it, which I think is really interesting and leads to the thought process that kids want to be heard and appreciated. Right now, there is not a funding mechanism for community health workers to deliver these interventions, which, as you imagine, really makes it difficult to roll this out into other communities. But there was a bill introduced last week in the State House, House Bill 6046, which would allow community health workers to bill for violence prevention intervention activities, and that was really a lot of the evidence for that bill was because of the work we're doing here in Muskegon. It says my time is up, so I'm going to make this super quick. There's a ton of people I'd like to thank. I'll show you that slide, but what's even more interesting now is that we received funding from the Department of Justice through a $300,000 Byrne grant to implement Safer Teens into 3 different school systems with high truancy rates. That would be Muskegon Heights, and Orchard View. We think that that's going to start happening in January of next year, and the researchers are super excited to understand the barriers to implementing this program in a school setting. And then finally, there's a whole nother aspect of this that I didn't talk about today, but Anna Seidsma edited a blog for me recently that talks about the Youth Advisory Board research that's being done, the board that's being developed in our community that had the opportunity to meet with youth from the Trigger Project in Washington, D.C., and then go to our nation's capital to the Department of Gun Violence Prevention. And then recently, recently we got to go to Benton Harbor and talk with that community about the root causes of violence. And we think we're going to do a Shop with a Cop experience in Benton Harbor, because Benton Harbor has a lot of trust issues with law enforcement, which fortunately we don't have as much of. And then these are just all the people that are helping support the Safer Teens rollout here in Muskegon County. And thank you for your time.
I wanted to make sure that you had a couple of minutes, some minutes to answer some questions. So we'll take 2 questions. Questions, not comments, okay?
The question I would ask is why Rotary gave up our mentoring program. I was deeply involved with the mentoring program through Muskegon Public Schools. I had 3 mentees from the school systems. Happy to say went on to be successful, but I think being a mentor makes you better understand where these kids come from, what their dilemmas are, and how we can help them become successful.
Thank you, I agree.
Thank you for the presentation. What are some of the qualifications when they do come into the hospital that trigger that response, please?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So in the hospital setting, the youth come in for any reason. Age 13 to 21 are the ones we're looking for, boys and girls. And I'll just read you the screening questions because I think it's remarkable that about 20% of youth in our community screen positive for these 3 questions. The first one is, in the past 3 months, have you thrown something at someone, pushed, grabbed, shoved, or slapped someone? That's the lowest bar. The second one is, in the past 3 months, have you kicked, bit, hit with a fist, hit or tried to hit something hard, beat up or choked someone? And the third one is, in the past 3 months, have you ever threatened someone with a knife or gun, or used a knife or gun in self-defense? So 20% of the youth that come into our emergency room for any reason at all screen positive for one of these 3 questions, which I think is just jaw-dropping.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Great presentation. And for our honorariums, Muskegon Rotary has given funds to our shelter box, which is a partnership on disaster relief with Rotary International, and so that represents, our honorarium for your presentation today, which was a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't. Oh, the birthday slide. Sorry, Mike. We have a long list. I'm not going to go through all the dates because there are a number of them, but those individuals are Patricia Wallstra, Jeanette Hoyer, Dane Robinson, Chris McGuigan, Michelle Burley, John Rupert, Brianna Scott, and Rachel Fawcett. There's a lot of names, and I'm sure many of you know them. Wish them happy birthday, and let's sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, and a reminder that this is your birthday week, or if you have one and haven't contributed, you can do that also to our Caring Connection, which is a benefit of our to club members, and we'll be talking about that in one of our Rotary International Rotarians in Action videos. At this time, I'm going to call forward Jim Fisher, who is going to lead the Brave Rotarians contest today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am representing our dear friend Meredith Smiley, who has the job recently of coordinating and chairing the Brave Rotarians contest and sending 4 people off the island. So shortly, Mike will spin the wheel. But first, for this particular contest, Meredith has asked several of our fellow Rotarians who have been longtime donors to Rotary International to share their reasons for wanting to contribute to Rotary International. This is from Rem Sprague, and he says, I quote, "I donate to the Rotary International Foundation because I believe in Rotary International's mission to have a positive impact on the world. I enjoy Muskegon Rotary, the friends I've made, the impact we've made in Muskegon, the welcoming culture, and the regular information about what is happening around us. But I also realize Muskegon Rotary is part of a worldwide organization, and I am proud of that membership too. In order to carry out its worldwide mission, Rotary International needs the support of Rotarians everywhere. They are us, and we are them. And to everybody who is contributing, thank you, and to all of those of you who would like to contribute at whatever level, we always encourage it. And at this time, Mike, let's see who the first victim is. I can't read it. Tell me who it is. Oh, sorry, Melissa, if you're here. Next. Ryan Sturkenberg. Sorry, Ryan, but thank you for your contribution. Dave Medendorp. It was almost Meredith. And the last? Pam Babbitt. Sorry, Pam. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, want to do the Rotarians in Action. The District 6290 Inbound Youth Exchange Student Services Conference took place this last weekend. It was hosted by our Muskegon Rotary Youth Exchange Committee. The conference's primary purpose was to give the inbound students the experience of giving service to others in West Michigan. The inbound students did 3 service projects at a food truck in Muskegon Heights, our microforest, and reading children's books in their native languages at Heckley Hospital. Mike, would you please show the brief video? Yes, there's a very long list of Muskegon and other Rotarians who contributed their time over the weekend. The list is way too long to go in for you. You did get a chance to see some of their faces in those slides, and so to those who contributed their time and efforts, we sincerely appreciate that. Thank you. At this time, we're going to announcements. Rewind will not be meeting tonight. A reminder that Rotary After Hours social event will be held tonight at the Lakeshore Museum from 5:30 to 7:30. If you haven't already signed up, you're welcome to attend. So if you didn't sign up, it's going to be a great evening. I'd encourage you to attend. Nancy, when you come forward.
Nancy Crandall, one more reminder that there will be a work trip to Honduras this coming year, February 16 to 22 in Tegucigalpa, or just outside the capital of Honduras, working with parents and community to build a new library at an elementary school. We will be taking some youth interactors from Muskegon as well. The cost for the trip is $800. That's all food and lodging, transportation, plus airfare. Due date for applications November 30. And again, I would encourage anyone who is thinking about going to consider it carefully. And if you have questions, please contact Sarah Renzema-Simiga.
Thank you, Nancy. This is a little bit of a lengthy announcement, so bear with me. At our annual meeting to be held during our December 19 luncheon, we will be holding our election for new officers and directors. These new officers and directors will take office this coming July 1st, 2025. As you may know, our nomination committee process of developing a slate of office slate started in August. After that nomination process was completed, the Board of Directors approved a slate of officers and directors at its meeting this last Tuesday. This slate includes the 2 additional director positions approved by the membership's vote last week to amend the club bylaws. The following individuals in associated positions represent the board-approved slate of officers and directors. Again, these individuals will take these positions July 1st, 2025. President nominee Lisa Tyler, Treasurer Kimberly Taylor. The directors for a 2-year term ending June 30, 2027, Dimitri Poland. For 3-year terms ending June 30, 2028, Arlen Gaddy, Lisa Kraus, Melissa Moore, and Sarah Renzema Sibinga. And that is the slate in accordance with the club's bylaws. They will be taking their positions. They've already been put into the process by being elected as president nominees along the way. Dave Alexander will ascend to the office of president, and Roger Morgenstern will ascend to the office of president-elect. So that is the slate of officers, but other nominations can be offered. So this will be in the RIM, and we'll also be putting it out on a club runner. So that's our slate of officers. At this time, I'll call on, we'll do the raffle, and I'm not certain who's handling the raffle today. Oh, Josh Silvis, thank you. $20, 864. 864. There must be a story behind it. Okay. Next, Josh. $10. 811. 811. Right next door. $823. Got it. 823. 823.
Roll once. 823. For $5. 775.
775. Oh. Folks over here, you sat on the wrong side of the room. Okay, next week's program will be an overview of the Boys and Girls Club with the tour to follow. Now, that's really important for you to know that we will have our program, and for those who want to get a tour of the Boys and Girls Club, haven't had one or want to do one again, we will be proceeding, those who are interested will proceed over to the Boys and Girls Club for a tour. At this time, please rise and we'll recite the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it fair to all concerned? Will it build a goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll see you next week. The meeting's adjourned.